Hello everyone. In this module, we will learn about PICO framework to develop a research question. So let's first see our goals and learning objectives. So we want to understand how to formulate a well-focused question and search strategy by identifying the key concept according to the PICO framework. So we will learn what is a PICO framework and why it is useful. And then we'll learn how to formulate a question using the PICO framework. So let's start by first looking at why we need PICO. Now, PICO is a framework that helps us to form a well-focused question and facilitate literature review. Now, asking the right research question is difficult, yet fundamental for evidence-based decision-making. And in the absence of a well-focused question, it becomes difficult and time-consuming to first identify the appropriate resources and then look for relevant evidence. So to understand what I mean by that, let's take an example. Does diabetes affect dental health? Now, let's focus on what's wrong with this research question. Now, as you see it, in this question, this is a very broad question. Now let's understand how. We are saying we are interested in knowing the dental health of diabetic patients, but it is not clear which diabetic patients we are interested in. Are we talking about pediatrics or we are talking about adults? So one thing that's not clear here. Then second thing, as you see here, we don't know if there will be a control group or we're just going to study the diabetic patients. The next thing, an important thing that is not clear here is we are defining the outcome as dental health. So dental health in itself is a broad term. It could mean so many different things. So we might be talking about bad breath, or we might be talking about cavities, missing teeth, filled teeth, etc. So there can be so many things that could describe the dental health. Okay, so and if we do a literature review with this research question, we will end up with hundreds of research articles to look for, which will make our task of literature review extremely hard. So it is utterly important to narrow your research question to be more specific and precise in terms of the variables and the population of interest. And we will see this question again in a little bit in a more focused way. Okay. So now to develop a research question of your own, you first need to think about what are you curious about. A successful research project depends on how well an investigator formulates a research question from problem faced in day-to-day clinical life. Now, day-to-day practice generates curiosity, and your curiosity generates questions. So you might have questions coming from your clinical experiences. So for example, for gingivitis patients who are receiving prophylaxis, will receiving plaque indices using disclossant before having patient brush and floss, is that more effective than receiving disclossant after brushing and flossing their teeth? Or a question might come from your dental profession. So you want to know how thorough is the knowledge of dental students about medication to prescribe them safely. Or you want to evaluate the outcomes of a community-based learning program for improving oral health. Or you might have questions about some aspects of dental patients. So for example, you want to know what are the periodontal treatment needs in the Medicaid patient population. So you can see that question can come from anywhere in your practice or profession or your patients, anywhere. Okay. Next, we will discuss the tips for developing a draft research question. Now, how do you draft a research question? The first thing you do is you brainstorm ideas. You try to choose a topic that interests you because we all tend to do better when something is interesting to us. And then you make sure that the topic is manageable in terms of time and resources. What I mean by that is you make sure you have all the equipment, or if you need any personnel, if you need any software support, or if you are planning a longitudinal study, you have the time at your side to carry out the research in your setting. Then, keeping all these factors in mind, you design or you formulate your PICO question, and then you refine it and finalize your focused research question. Okay? Now, it's time to understand what is PICO. So PICO is an acronym where P stands for patient, population, or problem. I stands for the intervention. C stands for the comparison or the control group, and O stands for the outcome variable. Okay, now let's see each component in detail. So what is PICO population? The population is individual patient or a group of patients with a certain health condition or characteristics that you are interested in studying. So it could be certain sex group, certain gender, or a certain age group that you're interested in, or maybe some racial group, or people in certain income group, or people of different education levels. It could also be patients with a certain disease or a health condition. For example, patients with removable partial dentures. You want to know certain characteristics of them, so that becomes your population. Next is the PICO intervention. So it is a main intervention which you are interested in studying. It could be therapeutic, preventative, diagnostic, etiologic, or prognostic. So it could be type of treatment. So for example, you are interested in studying a new drug or a new procedure or exposure or the effect of an educational intervention, or it could be an intervention level as well. So intervention level, what I mean by that is you could be comparing different dosages of a medication or different frequencies, you might want to compare that. Or it could also be the delivery. So as it's well known that there could be differences between clinics. So it could be where the intervention is delivered, or if an intervention involved hand skills. So it varies who gives the intervention. So it could be who delivers the intervention as well. So these could all be part of PICO intervention. Okay. Next, we look at the PICO comparison group or the PICO. So it is the other intervention you want to compare your main intervention to. It could be an alternative treatment. So you might want to compare your new intervention with the standard treatment or placebo or an entirely new treatment. And note that there may not be always a control group. So for example, if you want to evaluate the anxiety level in patients undergoing anesthesia for dental treatment, in this case, we have no control group. We are just evaluating all the patients who are undergoing anesthesia for dental care, and we are looking at their anxiety levels. Okay? So the last is the PICO outcome. The outcome, it is the expected outcome or effects of your study. So it could be improvement in symptom or reduction in some side effects, or you're looking at improved test score before and after. It could also be improved quality of life or cost effectiveness, and benefits for provider or patients. Okay, now we understand all the 4 components of PICO. Now it's time that we go back to our unfocused research question and transform it into a focused question under the PICO framework. So here I have the same example, but it is now in a more focused way. So the question is, do adult patients with type 2 diabetes obtaining dental care at the St. Louis Dental Center have a higher occurrence of dental caries than those without type 2 diabetes? As you see, I have highlighted each components of PICO in this question. So our adult patients, so this is our patient or the population we are interested in studying. Now with type 2 diabetes, now here type 2 diabetes becomes the intervention. It is not an intervention actually which we are giving, but we are comparing the patients with type 2 diabetes to those without type 2 diabetes, which becomes our control group. And the outcome variable here is the dental caries. We want to see if patients with type 2 diabetes seen at this particular clinic have a higher occurrence of dental caries than those without type 2 diabetes. So it's a much more focused question that will facilitate your research. Okay. So now, at this point, we have a clear understanding of a focused research question. And now let's see how this knowledge can help us with literature review. So once the precise PICO question is developed, we will choose our search term. For each component of PICO, look for all alternative words or phrases. So for example, for P, the population or patient, you can look for adults, you can look for dental patients, you can look for adolescents, and you can add whatever term you find relevant. For I, you might search for type 2 diabetes or diabetes mellitus, and similarly for C, you could look for non-diabetic, control, or healthy patients. For outcome, we could look for dental caries, we could look for DMFT, decayed, missing, filled. So I have added all the terms I could think of, but you might know more terms. So just remember that authors often use multiple words or phrases to describe the same term. So it is therefore necessary to think of all alternative words or phrases to capture all results that may be relevant to your search topic. Okay. Now, at this point, it's a good time to look at the characteristics of a good research question. Now, the F stands for feasible. The researcher must have the knowledge, time, and resources to carry out the process. Next, I stands for interesting. The research topic must keep the researcher interested in it throughout the process. N stands for novel. Your research may not be groundbreaking, but it must contribute some new knowledge to the educational theory and practice. Next is E. E stands for ethical, and your research must not do any harm to your participants. And R stands for relevant. So it must address some real-world problem in a direct or indirect way. So the final acronym become FINER, FINER. Okay. Sorry. Now, so this is the link for PICO worksheet that's available at Mosdo. And to complete this worksheet, you will need more information on research methodology, designs, and literature review. And all that information is available in the following modules. So follow those modules and happy researching. So what is your PICO question? Thank you.